redwood and the grape grow. See the valley from the Geyser Peak, and then we'll drink our way up that old dry creek. See that Pinot up there on the ridge. To get there, take the Wohler Bridge. Ain't it nice having paradise right here in your backyard? And if you want to lighten your load, grab a few friends and start rolling down the wine road. Between the east side and the west side road is where that mighty Russian River flows, and you can follow if you want to roam from the West County Fall to the Alexander Valley. Longman never took it's in your way. Just slow down and enjoy your day. You know there's plenty more wine to share. Half the fun is just getting there. Ain't it nice having paradise right here in your backyard? And if you want to lighten your load, grab a few friends and start rolling down the wine road. Rolling down the wine road.
It's a little hard to imagine today in the age of iPhones and apps. But back when we started, Gerald Ford was the president. Gasoline was 59 cents a gallon. And Rocky, the first Rocky, was in all the movie theaters. The wine road was more often a dirt road. And if you had a map, you were lucky. The year was 1976. We were celebrating 200 years of America. In those days, national wine advertising usually focused on a celebrity face or some catchphrase.
Paul Masson himself said it nearly a century ago. We will sell no wine before it's time.
I'm Jacqueline. Be a friend, won't you? Get comfortable. And get ready for something you'll like. This is the perfect moment for Martini and Rossi Red on the rocks. Here. Try it.
Riunite on ice.
That's nice.
Riunite on ice?
That's nice.
There's nothing quite as refreshing as a chilled bottle of Riunite wine, red, white, or rosé.
In the 1970s, California's Wine Institute and Wine Advisory Board had begun funding promotional films to educate consumers about the finer points of wine. Like this one, casting college kids rolling up their sleeves to pitch in for the harvest. Not exactly something you'd ever see in a vineyard. But getting the word out about small regional wineries was nearly unheard of. By the mid-70s, 25,000 acres of vines were planted in Sonoma County. And yet it was still a wine region searching for an identity. After rebounding from Prohibition, Sonoma was mostly known as a supplier of bulk wine to larger wineries like Gallo. Napa Valley, the ever-imposing next-door neighbor, seemed to attract all the attention on a national level. At the Judgment of Paris in 1976, California wines shocked the world by beating out French wines in a blind tasting. It was a huge breakthrough for American wines. But it didn't help that all the winners were Napa Valley wines. Even if the prize-winning Chateau Montelena Chardonnay had sourced 40% of its grapes from Sonoma County. A typewritten way tag from Bacigalupe Vineyards is all that exists as proof 40 years later. That same year, in 1976, Sonoma County would receive worldwide attention, but not for its wines. Instead, it was the bizarre spectacle of Christo's running fence, and all the controversy it stirred up.
All a bunch of garbage.
Wait a minute, what's about
That's art? Some lousy curtain coming through here with a bunch of city slickers looking at it? The hell with it, I'm against it. I think it's stupid.
At the same time, a severe drought dried up the region, much like the one that hit Northern California in 2013. And it got so bad that the National Guard troops were brought in to truck water 7 days a week to farms throughout Sonoma County. Also in 1976, although to much less fanfare, a local wine publicist and writer named Millie Howie decided it was time to put Sonoma County on the map. She brought together 5 wineries to form the Russian River Wine Road. They were Geyser Peak, Fopiano, Simi, Pedroncelli, and Trentadue. Their first objective was to put out a map, a simple, hand-drawn sketch laid out like a welcome mat. And by the time the first map was Xeroxed, there were already 11 wineries on board. It would turn out to be one of the earliest wine tasting maps published in California.
Millie's vision for the beginning of the Wine Road, and the reason that she helped bring people together as a promotional group was, hey, we're all within viewing distance of the Russian River, and the Russian River has appeal, and it's a reason to bring people up here, and we could create a path along the Russian River Wine Road.
And Millie Howie did a great job of creating this image of an area that was all interconnected. You could do a loop around this area. It was a cohesive area with a number of really good wineries. It was a really good marketing move.
She was such a believer. She was so passionate about the wines, about the whole industry, about supporting Sonoma County. And she was one of those people that if the job needed to be done, she just rolled up her sleeves and did it. She was not pretentious in any way.
It was, I think, imperative to band the other people together in a common cause of creating an image of a region, a place, an identity, and that was what the Wine Road did. It gave people a reason to come there.
She just wrote a column, a wine column in the local papers, and she was very in tune to a lot of the old timers. I think she was instrumental in says we should get people here to these places to meet these older people because they're not going to be around for too much longer. And so I think, via barrel tasting or whatever, that was a good way to start it. And I think that's how it all started.
Marketing in the early years for the Wine Road was basically a map with winery members getting together and marketing themselves. And I really like to call those days kind of the Wild West.
I think it was just all by word of mouth. When people happened into the winery, I mean, it was an exciting day that they found you, and it was all by word of mouth.
It was very much a farming community. It wasn't a tourist destination. It was a farming area. It was a very different world back then.
My father would be in the corner over here with a couple of glasses and a jug of wine and pour you a sample. In fact, I always found it humorous. Our wine glasses were old jelly glasses.
We basically were just farmers, and we didn't know anything about marketing. We just farmed and made wine. So when this organization, Wine Road, came out, we said, let's join because it could help us promote our winery.
I'll never forget going to Trentadue. I and 2 friends had an appointment. It was pouring rain. We're totally lost. We finally found the number and found the house and went over and knocked on the back door of the house. And somebody came to the door and said, I'll go get my father or whomever it was. And he led us out through the rain to the shed where we proceeded to taste wine. And one by one, the family members started to show up out there. They were hand labeling wine. And then the daughter's boyfriend came, and pretty soon it was this whole extended group of people. And we were there to do wine tasting, and it was one of the most amazing experiences because it was what Sonoma County was in those days.
The mid-70s, there was still probably half the acres was still in orchards. I mean, you had a lot of prunes still, you had intermixed vineyards, new vineyards going in, so that was kind of a transition period. So wine was kind of the new kid on the block, so to speak.
One of the ways that the Wine Road marketed the maps was by putting little advertisements in travel magazines, and you could send in $1, and remember, these are the old days, and you send in your $1 and eventually you'd get your map, and that map would bring you right back to northern Sonoma County.
By the mid-1970s, the American love affair with the car was still going strong. But driving from winery to winery on day-long wine tasting tours was still very much a novelty. People needed a reason, and that reason was barrel tasting.
The concept is to taste it in the barrel, and it's going to tell you a little bit about how that wine's going to be once it's bottled. It's not quite the finished wine, but it'll give you the idea of how it's going to turn out.
One of the first Wine Road events Millie organized was a barrel tasting weekend.
It was an exciting thing because people had not had the opportunity to, stand in the winery and taste right out of the barrel and find out what wine was like the first year.
Anybody could come up to Wine Country with a glass in their hand and go around to the wineries and have a chance to meet winemakers and taste wine out of the barrel.
Basically, it was free. You brought your own glass, and you basically followed the Wine Road map to each of the wineries, and they'd have a barrel and maybe a winemaker or a grape grower next to it, and you could ask all kinds of questions in order to educate your palate.
I remember the exact first one. I mean, I think we had 5 or 6 cars over a 6-hour day. People come in the door, it was great. You'd take them back and you'd thief out of the barrel and you'd sit there and talk for as long as they wanted to.
And you'd walk into a winery and you'd be the only people there. It really was not a crowded event.
People came for the wine. It was a unique experience. It didn't happen everywhere. It was something that wasn't done elsewhere. It was a rare opportunity for people to get in, and you had a story to tell. You could explain to them it wasn't a snapshot. Here's wine in barrel, here's wine in bottle, here's where it goes, and along the way there's a journey and a change. And you involved in that whole winemaking process, that mystique that they never got to see. Otherwise, they were getting off a shelf and pulling a cork, and that was what it was a snapshot.
And it was really wine connoisseurs. I mean, it wasn't advertised. You just had to know somebody who knew somebody that told you about the event.
There was no internet. There were a handful of books, and the books generally talked over people's heads and tried to glamorize everything. It was an opportunity to get people to come in and share the secrets of the cellar with the people who work there, and that was a very, very special thing.
As other wineries saw the success of barrel tasting, they got on board. By the mid-80s, there were more than 40 wineries, and by the 90s, there were nearly 60.
At the time, the map was critical for a small winery. We were making 1,500 cases to be found in Sonoma County.
In 1 year, we went from
having 50 wineries on the map, and we had, in less than a year, we had 20 more wineries want to join, and we were having a hard time figuring out what we were going to do to add them to the map because it was getting really crowded.
Near the turn of the last century, the Russian River Wine Road had evolved from a grassroots collective into a legitimate organization, eventually even hiring its first full-time employee.
I gave up a really fabulous job to take a job for the Russian River Wine Road, and it was $12 an hour.
It was the pivotal point where the Wine Road went from what it was, which was sort of a roll-your-sleeves-up volunteer group, to what it is now.
I worked for the first 3 months without cashing a paycheck. I just pinned them on the bulletin board, knowing that at some point we'd start collecting assessments and I could cash those checks.
Along the way, board members came up with new events to attract even more visitors throughout the year. And that's how Winter Wineland and Wine and Food Affair were born.
We had to come up with a plan to get people here in the slower months, January, February, March, so Winter Wineland was born. It's in January, and it is an awesome time of year in Sonoma County. We have people that come from all over the country for Winter Wineland, and I think that really is just a great seasonal escape for them. Wine and Food Affair is one of those events we started because you can't really talk about wine without talking about food. So we started an event where every winery submitted a recipe for a cookbook that we printed, and then when people came for the weekend, they could taste the wine paired with that recipe. And it was a really cool thing because really wineries use it as a time to feature a recipe that is a family favorite, or a lot of wineries will say they're serving something that they usually serve to their cellar crew during harvest. So the recipes end up being really abundant, rich, hearty, warm kind of meals that are served during November. So that's a fun event for us.
At some point, they even outgrew their name, as the Russian River label became confusing in the age of new appellations.
So really it was around the mid-2000s that we decided we really need to relook at the name of our organization, Russian River Wine Road. It was formed at a time when we used the Russian River as a descriptor for where people would find our wineries. There were no AVA groups at the time when it was formed in 1976, so we changed the name from Russian River Wine Road to Wine Road, Northern Sonoma County. I think that from the day one that I was hired, I would just answer the phone, Wine Road. So that's what we go with, and everybody knows us as Wine Road.
But as often happens when organizations grow quickly, success can have its downside. And by the mid-2000s, barrel tasting had expanded to 2 weekends, attracting more than 30,000 people. It was turning into a massive party, almost too big for many wineries to handle.
I think for a time we lost our way. We tried to be something we weren't. We forgot how special this area was. It's about farmers and rustic people, sophisticated, but there's rusticity here that's really wonderful. There's a soul of this place, and we don't have to be anything else.
At one point, it came to an apex where there were so many people wanting to learn more about wine, but then that kind of shifted a little bit into more of what I would call a party atmosphere.
You could visit a whole lot of wineries on a $20 bill. And so it became the thing of young people to come, and it got a reputation for being this big giant party.
It was a fraternity party on wheels. People, they would drink from San Francisco or whatever college they were coming from.
It wasn't so much anymore about the wine, it was how much can we eat, how much can we drink.
Really, with the advent of social media, $10 a weekend became $10 to party for a weekend, and it definitely was out of control.
Once the word got out, and people started, hopping onto 40-passenger buses, and it got a little out of control.
You try to tell them a little history about the wine, they don't care. It's just, and they're reaching through all their friends, all these glasses coming out.
The price was so inexpensive that it became sort of a free-for-all, sort of like a hold your glass out and drive by as slowly as you can and get as much as you can. To have someone just walk up and sort of do this to you, it was almost an insult. You can't do that.
The Wine Road took some lengths to kind of rein things in, and we did things like, wristbands and charging a little bit more.
Different things that we could do in terms of policing it, providing some CHP officers to help with some of the traffic, eliminating any buses.
And that actually brought the event back to a little more in focus.
They've started doing a better job of educating people as to what it should be.
So now when people come, The wineries also took it upon themselves to educate people, slow it down, slow the process. It isn't all about trying to get a wine in your glass and jamming to the next winery.
We've definitely reined that event in. It's still 2 weekends. I think it's $50 a person per weekend now, and we have about 6,000 people each weekend, which is really super manageable. People that are interested in wine, people who are coming and stocking their cellars, come for barrel tasting. They really buy futures, and that's something that our wineries count on.
It gradually sunk in that if we wanted to get back to what we were of having an identity in a place, we needed to get back to the focus on the wine and why it was special and where it came from and the people behind it. And I think the Wine Road, you can't put it back in the can. That will never happen. It'll never be what it was in an earlier time, again, without the internet and all of that. But I think the organization's done a very good job of bringing it back to some of the original purpose.
At some point, we stumble on another film crew. Who could be better to explore barrel tasting than a curious French documentary producer?
Il est bon. Je vais aller parler aux gens, aux clients là-bas et leur demander pourquoi ils viennent goûter le vin à la barrique avant qu'il soit prêt. Why come taste wine out of the barrel when it's not quite ready instead of waiting for it to come out of the bottle?
I think for a lot of people in California, we taste wine all the time, so it's a unique experience for them to taste unfinished wine.
We're getting sort of the preview, and we can kind of see where it's going. So in a couple years, we understand, we get that first taste, and then in a couple years, we can see where it's going to develop.
Why do you choose to taste now out of the barrel?
To evaluate the wine at its youngest and to get a sense of my own palate as later on I taste the bottles out of my cellar.
When you're tasting it out of the barrel, it might not go down as easy as it will when it's finished in a bottle, but you can tell that the flavors are there and they're just going to develop further and get smoother and more married. They'll just mesh together better.
This is not a young one. If you had something that was a 2015 that's only been in the barrel for a few months, it's going to be really green, really young. It's going to be hard to tell where it's going because it's going to be another year and a half in the barrels. These are almost done. They only have a few more months in the barrel, so you're almost getting the finished product.
So in French we would say, so if the wine passes, clearly this one is passing your, yes, we would say, il est bon.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say that for me?
Oh, yes. Il est bon.
Il est bon.
Il est bon. Il est bon. Il est bon.
Il est bon.
Il est bon.
There are no bad wines on Wine Road.
Thank you so much, you guys.
And every year at barrel tasting, you can expect a few surprises.
There's me and a crowd of people around me, and then Kayla gets out of the car, and I'm pretty sure she knows right away what's going on. But then she walks all the way up over to me, and I drop down onto one knee and ask her to marry me.
And I didn't hear him at first, so I'm gonna say it again. And then everybody just went in for a giant group hug. It was pretty fun.
10 or 15 years from now, we'll be 40 years old with kids coming back to wine taste some more. Be like, hey, you remember that one time?
Today, we print 400,000 maps a year. I think people really love to have something in their hand that they can unfold and highlight where they're going to go.
Down at the square in Healdsburg, you will still see people walking around, looking at their map. To Sonia's point, they'll be circling where they're going or where they've been and making notes.
If I'm out eating lunch someplace here locally in Sonoma County, I can almost always know that there's going to be somebody at a table near me with their map unfolded, talking about what their next plan is.
So many people still like something tangible that they can hold on to, that they can run their finger up and down.
The map, I'm certain, will never go away.
No. And I always think, boy, wouldn't Millie love to see that map in everybody's hand and know that that's really their guiding, trip itinerary at school.
It's good to see some things never change.
If you look at the wine world as a whole, we've gone global, we've gone digital, we've gone into these huge areas, and what helps with the Wine Road is it does bring it all back down.
We weren't thinking about selling wine back then. I think, we were just thinking about meeting people. I mean, over the years, I think marketing has become, more and more a focus. Naturally, we all had to sell our product, but today it's almost necessary. You have to have, these events for the people, that are introducing new wines and new labels and so forth.
That's what made us unique, was the fact that we made that decision to work together as a team and as an industry.
No customer is going to come here and visit one winery. They're going to visit a lot. And so the more that we help each other, it's a better thing for everyone.
We were stronger as a team working together and all pulling in the same direction than we were as competitors with one another.
I worked in corporate America for a long time where your competitors were your enemies. And in the wine business, your competitors are your friends.
There are so many brands today on the marketplace that have no bricks and mortar and no vineyards tied to them. They're just simply tasting rooms or second labels. And it's hard for the public to know what will endure. But the Wine Road creates a setting and a background where people can come and really experience agriculture and see that wine gives a sense of place and that it has a story.
So do me a favor and raise a toast. Because of you, we're celebrating 40 years along the Wine Road.
Well, the weekend's just a day away. It's Friday and I'm getting paid. And you know where I wanna go, where the redwood and the grape grow.
Well, 40 years is a long time. You're right, it's a really long time. What organizations last 40 years? Not too many organizations. Clearly, marriages. Clearly, you're lucky if you live 40 years the way we lived in the 70s anyway.
Nice having paradise right here in your backyard. And if you want to lighten your load, grab a few friends and start rolling down the wine road.
One time we had chickens over by the house, and my mom was taking a shower and she heard the dog go after the chicken. She automatically just runs out of the shower to the tasting room to grab the chicken, walking back with his chicken under her arm.
To the Alexander Valley, lawman never took it's in your way. But just slow down and enjoy your day. You know there's plenty more wine to share.
In the back of our warehouse, we have just a ton of empty wine bottles on a shelf. And I have people come in, when I have other meetings, and people will say, well, did you have a big party here? And I'll say, well, no, that's just for meetings.
Grab a few friends and start a roll.